Hello, this is Lovisa
and Chris.
And in this video we're gonna talk about weddings. More specifically, the difference between Swedish weddings and American weddings.
So Lovisa and I were originally going to get married in June 2020, but because of COVID we've had to reschedule a couple of times. So we're actually going to get married next July, and that kind of gave us a little inspiration when we started talking about how we want our wedding to be. So we decided that we would talk about the differences between a Swedish wedding and an American wedding.
So the first big difference actually has to do with the proposal, or what you sometimes do before the proposal.
And that would be asking permission. So for me, I would ask Lovisa's dad for permission in the States, or I guess that's a popular thing to do in the States, but in Sweden, that is absolutely not a thing to do.
Yeah, I think I said that if you ask my dad for permission, then we're definitely not getting married. Because in Sweden, it's just, I think that's considered not to be equal. My dad has absolutely nothing to say in who I choose to spend my life with. And, you know, if anything, my mom would have just as much to say as my dad, but none of them could ever answer that question. Like, they could never give permission for you to marry me, because I'm an adult and that's my own choice who I want to spend the rest of my life with. And if anything, they're just happy that I've found someone that I love.
And so we'll go into the second difference, and that would be that's actually with the wedding, and that is at the ceremony. When in the States, the bride often walks down the aisle with her dad, but in Sweden, the bride walks down with the groom. They walk in together into the church, which is quite a big difference.
Yeah, so the Swedish tradition states that you walk down the aisle together, just the same way as you're walking into a marriage together as equal partners. There are some people in Sweden that will have their dad walk them down the aisle, and some people will have their mom walk them down the aisle, or someone else. But in most cases, and the way the Swedish tradition has always been, is that you walk down the aisle together. Now for the third difference, that's something that I actually noticed when we went to a wedding together in the States. And that was when the couple was introduced after the wedding, and they were introduced as Mr. and Mrs. and then followed by the man's name. And that's something that you would definitely not hear in Sweden. Like, you would never refer to me as Mrs. and then your name. And if anyone introduced me like that, I would get quite upset, because then why not do it the other way around? That's, again, something that's like with the equality in Sweden. You would always, like, if you would say that, you would say Mr. and Mrs. and then just the last name, or you would say both names.
And so then the fourth difference that we're going to talk about is when it actually comes to the reception or the after party. So I went to my first Swedish wedding last August, and I really was not prepared for the length of the reception. There's not that many speeches in your typical American wedding, maybe 4 to 6. But at the Swedish wedding that I went to, there was, I don't even know how many speeches there were, but there were a lot. And the dinner is served much more spread out. So the dinner was over several hours. So in your typical American wedding, dinner is served pretty quickly at the reception, and then usually just one course, at least the ones that I've been to. And then people start partying right away, dancing, and that's about it. But it was quite different at the Swedish wedding I went to.
Yeah, a typical Swedish wedding, you will have a 3-course meal, and you will sit down for several hours, because while you're eating, there will be a lot of speeches. It varies from wedding to wedding how many speeches. Some have a lot of friends that will make speeches, and some will only have a few. And then your family will usually yeah, have a couple of speeches too, and yeah, it goes on for quite some time sometimes. And then after this 3-course meal, you will a lot of times have the cake, or a new thing that's more popular quite recently is that you have the cake before the dinner. So straight after the church, you will go to wherever you're having the reception, and the first thing will be the cake and some champagne. The final thing we were going to talk about in regards to this is choosing the last name.
So in the States, I think it's pretty common for the bride to take the groom's last name, or sometimes they just keep their last names, but I think it's most common for the bride to take the groom's last name.
And in Sweden, it's a little different. Like, sometimes the bride will take the groom's name, sometimes the groom will take the bride's name, sometimes you choose both, or sometimes you find a last name that you've had further back, like maybe your grandparents' last name, or you can even make up your own last name by combining the two names sometimes.
Well, we really hope that you enjoyed hearing us and our baby talk about the differences in American versus Swedish wedding culture. Most of the things revolved around equality with the couples, as equality is super important here in Sweden, and I've learned that in my time being here. Please like and subscribe, and leave us any comments, or if you have any other fun wedding stories or differences that you notice, we'd love to hear about them.
And of course, as with everything, this is just speaking in general terms. There are a lot of Swedes getting married in different ways as well, but we've just chosen to talk about the most common ways to get married in Sweden and in the States.
Yep. Hej då.
Hej då. Yeah, exactly. They will announce all the speeches as well.